Hey there everybody, welcome to Auto Bears and welcome to the UK launch of the new Toyota RAV4 plug-in hybrid. When we think of modern day Toyotas, we do think of hybrid cars because that is very much their bread and butter and what Toyota are established at. But when we think of these hybrids, we also think of self-charging hybrids. By that I mean we have the engine and regenerative braking charging up the battery and not an external source like a home charger. However, a couple of years ago we did see the first plug-in hybrid from Toyota in the form of the Prius Plus, and it was pretty much its own model standing next to the self-charging hybrid because they looked very different, although they did share the same Prius shape. Now roll on to 2021 and we've got this, the new RAV4 plug-in hybrid, and as you can see it's still very much a RAV4. It doesn't look in any way different like the Prius Plus does to the standard Prius. And I'm on the UK launch of this new plug-in hybrid and I'm going to let you know why it's pretty special. As I said, style-wise, you can't really tell the difference between the plug-in version of the RAV4 and the self-charging version. There are a couple of little nips and tweaks at the front and rear bumpers, as well as the badging, of course, on the side that says plug-in hybrid. Not to mention the extra filler cap on the other side in order to plug in and charge up the battery. But other than that, it looks very much like a traditional RAV4, which is no bad thing. It's a very stylish car and I think it looks really American and pretty cool at the same time. It's definitely a huge improvement over the Mark IV. But it is a very striking car and the RAV4 is very much an established car here in the UK, selling nearly 230,000 of them since it began with the Mark I. But I've got this latest generation here with the plug-in version and it's still a very handsome car and it is really well proportioned. But I think that's enough for looking at the outside of this RAV4 because I haven't got it for too long. Let's have a little look at the inside. Sat in the front of the RAV4 plug-in, you are greeted by a nicely laid out and well built interior. It's a very comfortable place to be as well. Now of course, this being a mid-sized SUV, getting in and out of the RAV4 is really easy because of that raised ride height. So if you do suffer from any kind of mobility issues and you're after a plug-in hybrid, well, this could very well be the SUV for you. And then once you're sat in the driver's seat, you find that they are very comfortable. They do hold a big bear like me in place, and there is plenty of adjustment because they are electrically adjustable. Now the steering has got plenty of adjustment as well in terms of rake and reach. So getting the perfect driving position is easy. Interior quality is really good in here as well. We got soft touch plastics on top of the dash, on the centre section here, on top of the doors, and a bit of leatherette trim on the door panel and also here on the armrest. Now granted, yes, lower down it is hard scratchy plastic, but that's what you tend to get with this segment of car. But what I really like as well is that we have got manual controls for the air conditioning and dual zone climate control, but we've actually got a rubber on the dials when you're changing the temperature, and that feels really nice. Kind of feels like a rugged SUV in that respect. And then yes, we have got some physical buttons here and they operate things like the drive mode select, the hybrid buttons as well, which I'll go into later on. And then we have got a little bit of rubber effect here on the door handle, so that again is a nice touch in here. Cubby spaces in the RAV4 are a little bit hit and miss. Now the door pockets I actually think are quite small. Yes, you can get a medium-sized bottle of drink in there, but they're not lined with any fabric, so loose items will rattle around a bit. Then just underneath the air vent we have got a little cubby space where you can put your wallet or some loose change, and there is a bit of rubber lining on the base so it will hold items in place. Then in front of the gear lever we have got an area with wireless charging, so you can put your mobile phone there, which is a nice handy feature. We've also got one USB-C input and a 12-volt socket. Behind the gear lever we have got a couple of decent sized cup holders. What is disappointing that there's no rubber lining with them, but we have got a couple of plastic grippers to hold a bottle in place. However, if you've got a tall bottle in there, it might find it a bit awkward reaching the gear lever. And then under the armrest, we've got a decent amount of extra space with two more USB charging inputs, a little removable tray where you could put some change or your wallet or keys, and then a bit of space underneath, which is very handy. And then we have got another little tray area here, again lined with rubber, so that is handy for putting some small items there. And then the glove box, which is lockable, and that is a nice feature. But that is, in honesty, quite small and a bit disappointing in this segment of car. But it is lockable, as I said, so that is handy. But all in all, it's got a nice amount of space in here. The quality is very good. We got the high-up infotainment system, so it's got a nice modern feel being high up on the dashboard. We got physical shortcut buttons on the outer edge. The display is nice and clear and easy to read. However, it's not as vibrant and as clear as some cars you get, like the Volkswagen Group vehicles, like the Tiguan and also the Skoda Kodiaq. But it's really nice and easy to use. You do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as well. But yeah, it's nice and comfortable in here. Everything just feels... it just feels very nice and comfortable. I wouldn't say it's the most vibrant of interiors. Something like the Peugeot 3008 definitely trumps the RAV4 in that department. But it's very comfortable, well screwed together, and yeah, fine for everyday driving. And on that note, I think it's time to have a little look at the back seats. Sat in the back of the RAV4, it is a very comfortable and spacious place to be. I am really impressed by it. Now that driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide, and as you can see, I've got a huge amount of knee room, and headroom is really good as well. You could easily get a couple of 6-footers sat in the back of the RAV4. Cubby spaces are not too bad back here as well. We've got some okay sized door bins where you can get a medium sized bottle of drink in there, but again not lined with any fabric. We have got our aeroplane style pockets on the backs of the front seats, and also we have got a centre armrest with a couple of additional cup holders. However, there is no through loading or ski hatch from the boot to load any longer items. So that's a little bit disappointing. We've also got a couple of air vents and also 2 USB charging inputs, so kids sat back here can charge up their mobile devices. Speaking of kids, we've got ISOFIX supports on the outer seats, and they're really easy to affix a child's seat because the bars are exposed, which is really handy. Also, the windows are nice and big, they allow a lot of light in, and it feels really airy in the back of the RAV4, even though we have got this dark headlining. Also, what I love as well is we have got heated seats in the back here for the outer passengers. Again, a lovely handy feature. And speaking of quality, we have actually got soft touch plastics here on top of the doors, which is something you don't usually see in this segment. So all in all, it's a really comfy place to be here in the back of the RAV4, easily accommodating a couple of 6-footers who could do a long journey here and come out the other end nice and relaxed. Opening the boot of the RAV4 plug-in presents you with 510 litres of space, which is actually a really decent amount in this segment. And what I like as well is that it's a nice square load area, and there's actually no boot lip whatsoever, so loading any large bulky items is an absolute doddle here in the RAV4. Now it's not devoid of features either. We've got some very sturdy tethering hooks, we've got a 12-volt socket, we've even got a 150-watt 2-pin plug as well, so that's going to be very handy if you go camping. And then underneath the boot floor we have got space for your charging cable, which is a Type 2, and then just behind there we have got your tyre puncture repair kit. But what I like as well is that there is actually room to store the tonneau cover underneath the boot floor, so if you do need to get the seats down, you've got a nice flat load area, and it does mean you don't have to leave the tonneau cover at home. So in terms of practicality, it's actually a very nice load area here in the RAV4. I love how wide and square the load area is on this car. But you know what? I think that's enough of looking at the practicality side of the RAV4 plug-in. Let's find out what it's like to drive. So once you get driving in the RAV4 plug-in, first impressions are really good. Just like the self-charging hybrid, it will try and drive in electric power only and just use the batteries to get you going, which gives you a really nice, quiet and relaxing drive. Now I'm doing about 40 miles an hour, and yeah, it feels really lovely, although there is a little bit of tyre roar coming into the cabin. Visibility is really good as well. We've got a lovely commanding view of the road ahead because you sit nice and high, but also looking over your shoulder, there's not the biggest of C-pillars, which does mean you haven't got the biggest of blind spots, but you do get blind spot monitoring as standard on both the trim levels on the plug-in hybrid, so in terms of safety wise, it's got you covered there. But yeah, it's just like most other kind of hybrid cars. It feels nice and quiet. It wants to drive in electric mode as much as possible. Of course, if you are, say, driving with very little in the way of charge, it will engage the petrol engine, and you can only really hear it when you put your foot down, but you're not going to do that too often. until you hear about the performance of the plug-in hybrid. But for now, first impressions are really lovely. Keeps all the strengths that the RAV4 has as a self-charging hybrid, but you have got increased capabilities, which we'll get onto in a moment. You've got two trims to choose from in the RAV4 plug-in range. You've got the Dynamic, which is what I've got here, and the top of the range Dynamic Premium. Now, it's about £3,500 difference between them, and on the Premium you do get extras such as the JBL stereo, a sunroof, ventilated front seats, and a faster charge cable. So in terms of picking out of the two, I'd say stick with the Dynamic. You get everything that you would want as standard in terms of creature comforts, but also safety. As I mentioned, you have got blind spot monitoring, you've got dual zone climate control, front and rear parking sensors, adaptive cruise control, and you've got satellite navigation, or if you want, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So in terms of everyday kits, you're pretty much catered for. And also, you save yourself a couple of grand at the same time. So when it comes to powering the plug-in, up front we've got the usual 2.5 litre petrol engine that you'll be familiar with if you know about the RAV4 and the self-charging hybrid. So for this plug-in, of course, the important bit is underneath the floor, where we've got an 18.1 kilowatt per hour battery, and when combined with the petrol engine, produces a surprisingly powerful 302 brake horsepower, which means that this big family hybrid SUV will hit 60 miles an hour in just 6 seconds, and that is much quicker than any of its rivals. And in fact, you could probably worry a couple of hot hatch drivers with that kind of performance. But despite the power and despite the 0 to 60 time, that's not the impressive figure. No, well, one of the impressive figures, I should say. So one of them I'm going to mention now is 46.47 miles, and that is how far you can travel potentially purely on EV power alone. And that is, for a plug-in hybrid, just hugely impressive. I mean, the norm tends to be around 30 miles you get of range on a plug-in hybrid, and then you just charge it up when you get home or you get to work. But 46 is, again, top of its class, and it means if you do the usual commuter length, which is around about 23 miles round trip, you don't need to use the petrol engine. You just do that route for a couple of days, charge it back up, and you're driving purely on EV power alone. And that, again, is hugely impressive. But if you do need to go on a longer trip and have the petrol engine give you a hand and a boost for range, well, again, the miles per gallon is another figure which is really standing out, and it's around 282 miles per gallon. I mean, that is absolutely nuts. I've never known a car to have that kind of miles per gallon, and that's a WLTP figure as well. So they have really strictly and stringently tested this RAV4 plug-in in order to come up with those figures. But it is hugely impressive, and other cars that are now coming into their own, cars like the Ford Kuga PHEV, can also do huge miles per gallons in that sense as well. So it's a brilliant time if you are after a hybrid SUV, because it's going to save you lots of money when it comes to fueling up your car. And again, that's just really impressive, and very impressive on this new RAV4. So what's the ride and handling like in the plug-in RAV4? Well, I drove the self-charging RAV4 a couple of years ago at a media day, and I was very impressed by it. It was a very comfortable car to drive. Granted, some of the bigger potholes and manhole covers did expose a little bit of weakness in the suspension, but for everyday driving, it was absolutely fine. And then when you were driving at speed, again, it felt nice and relaxing. Yes, if you're on a poor road surface, you got a bit of tyre roar coming in, but I was very impressed by it. It was really lovely. And the same has to be said for the plug-in version of the RAV4. So when it comes to the ride, it's fine for everyday driving. Now, granted, I'm actually on I say an A road, but it's got some B road qualities to it in terms of the actual quality of the tarmac. And the main intrusion I've got into the cabin, apart from the engine, because I have pretty much run out of battery charge is tyre roar. That's pretty much it. So if you're driving over a smooth bit of tarmac, it's absolutely fine, but if you are driving on a poor road surface, yes, you will get tyre roar coming into the cabin. But again, wind noise is nicely isolated away from the cabin. I can't really hear much from the wing mirrors or even the A-pillars. And then the engine noise, that's the only thing that will only come into the cabin if you put your foot down, because it has got that kind of CVT feel to it. So if I do put my foot down, there you go, you get the revs, you get the power gauge going all the way up to maximum, and that's about it. But
turn right and then immediately turn half right again.
I will do. But in terms of everyday driving, you're not going to have any issues with the RAV4 plug-in whatsoever. It deals with everyday bumps and imperfections really well, and it even feels comfortable on this A road, even though I am kind of juddering about a bit. It feels very nice and composed. So on the center console, we have got a couple of buttons that help you out with your hybrid mode system or your drive mode select. So in terms of drive mode select, we've got the usual Eco, Normal and Sport, and they are operated using the dial. You go left for Eco, right for Sport, and then you press the button on top to get it back to normal. But what I like as well is actually it changes colour depending on which mode you're in. So of course, if you're in Eco, it's going to be green. If you're in Normal, it's blue. And if you're in Sport, of course, it's going to be red. Now, in the daytime, you can't really see anything. However, driving at night, I think that will look really cool. So I can't wait to get the opportunity to drive this at night, because that will just kind of give a nice odd colour kind of coming into the cabin. And it is flanked then by a couple of buttons. Now, one of them, it says Auto EV. So basically with that button pressed, it will decide on its own if it's going to drive in full electric, hybrid or petrol engine by itself. So you're letting the car make all the decision making for you. Next to it, we have got EV charge hold. And that basically means if you've got a certain amount of charge in the battery and you don't want to use it, you press that button and it will pretty much use the petrol engine by itself. But every time you slow down, take your foot off the accelerator, you get the engine charging the battery, but you also get the regenerative braking charging the battery as well. So that will help boost up the range, but you're not actually using the battery. And then just behind there, we have got trail, and that basically puts the car into 4x4 mode. And really, you're not going to use that unless you're going off-road. And of course, yes, the plug-in hybrid is a 4x4, and we have got an electric motor at the front and at the back as well, so that does help distribute the power nice and evenly. So yeah, that's your buttons there to help you out when you're wanting to drive frugally in eco mode or hybrid mode or just full EV mode. So what are my thoughts on the Toyota RAV4 plug-in hybrid here on its UK launch? Well, in terms of the driving dynamics, it's a really nice car to drive. It is lovely and comfortable for day-to-day driving, and the performance is really impressive. 302 brake horsepower, 0 to 60 in just 6 seconds. I mean, yeah, that is almost sports SUV-like. But then we come to the main figures of why you're going to go for this car. 282 miles per gallon is just unbelievable. 46.47 miles just on battery power alone is a huge amount of range in a plug-in hybrid. I mean, I never expected to see that today. I kind of thought it would be in the mid-30s, but that is hugely impressive. And of course, if you do the average commute, as I mentioned earlier, around 23 miles round trip a day, you can drive this for a couple of days purely on battery power alone, charge it up, and then you go on for a couple more days then. You just never use that engine there under the bonnet. You can just drive it purely on EV mode, and that's really impressive because of that range. Of course, there is the cost factor to the RAV4 plug-in, and the fact that it starts at £47,000 or just over £47,000 may put a number of people off. And that's why I recommend the Dynamic over the Dynamic Premium, because you get everything that you want in terms of safety, in terms of comfort, and in terms of just standard kit. So yeah, the Toyota RAV4 plug-in hybrid is a hugely frugal and economical car, and it could very well be a great replacement for the self-charging hybrid if you just want that little bit extra but don't mind paying that little bit extra. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed my first drive UK launch review of the Toyota RAV4 plug-in hybrid. Of course, please hit that like button, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notifications icon to let you know when I, Dave the Auto Bear, bring out a new video. If you've got any questions about the RAV4 plug-in, I will do my utmost to answer them for you, but just put them down in the comments section below. Of course, I am on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and I always ask for you to subscribe on there as well, because you get additional content including live videos, still images of launches like this and any other cars I might come across. But everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and of course please stay safe, maintain your social distancing, wash your hands and wear a mask, and I will catch you all in the next video. So take care everyone, and bye bye.